All right, I finally bought one of these emulation handhelds. Yeah, look, I know I'm late to the game. I've known about these for years, and I've always been kind of hesitant, partially because I put a lot of time and money into my real Game Boys. I have modded DMGs, modded Game Boy Pocket, modded Game Boy Color. I've got a modded Game Boy Advance. I've got, EverDrive flash carts for those. And I like playing the real hardware and having some of the real games. Will this take away from that? Maybe. But I also had to think of it another way. Look, this can play Super Nintendo. This can play Sega Genesis. This can play PlayStation. This can play a lot of games that obviously you can't play on a Game Boy. Back in the early 90s, when I first, was learning about what a Game Boy was, and I pictured this Nintendo handheld, I imagined playing Maniac Mansion in color. At the time, I was playing Maniac Mansion for the NES, and I envisioned this Nintendo handheld that you could play Maniac Mansion on in color. And well, we're here. The future is here. This is that handheld. So, okay, let's open it up. Now, I bought this from Amazon, and depending on what, seller you're buying this from, it may or may not come with all the same accessories. It may or may not come with all the same games on the SD card, So keep that in mind. Now, the reason I bought this now and the reason I bought it off Amazon is, again, these have been around for years. Historically, these were a little harder to find. So you would have to go to some, smaller websites, try and find one. You were lucky if they had it in stock. And, if I ordered it to Canada, am I going to get dinged with, duty fees or import fees? So the fact now you can go on Amazon, I bought this on Amazon. It was Amazon Prime. It arrived the next day. It was $120 Canadian. I don't know if that's an amazing price. I assume you can probably get it a little bit cheaper if you looked around. But again, do I want to order it from a website that's shipping from outside of Canada? I don't know how long it's going to take to get it. So again, this was Amazon Prime, next day shipping. I haven't even gone through all of this yet. I've kind of taken a very, very quick look at it, but I haven't gone through all this yet. So it looks like we do have an instruction manual. Genuinely have not looked at that yet. There's a little USB SD card, micro SD card reader. I have no idea. Oh, that's a screen protector. Okay, cool. They give you a screen protector and some screen wipes, wet and dry, for cleaning the screen, I guess, before you put the screen protector on. Again, depending on the seller, you may or may not get all this stuff. You may not even get this cool little case. And we got a little USB to Type-C, a little charging cable. So that's everything that was in there. And then we got the little handheld itself. So this is the Miyoo Mini Plus. Okay. So when it comes to these little retro kind of Game Boy looking handhelds, there's kind of three popular ones, or the three most common ones, I think, would be the original Miyoo Mini, this one, the Miyoo Mini Plus, which is a little bit bigger, and then the Anbernic RG35XX, which is a little bit bigger still. I'll put a picture up. This isn't my picture, but it really helps people understand the size difference between the three common vertical Game Boy. It doesn't have analog sticks. There are versions of this that are even bigger that have analog sticks. And then, of course, there's a lot of different variants of these emulation handhelds that are in a wider format that have analog sticks. And if you're playing, obviously more, N64, PlayStation, up to maybe GameCube, you'd obviously want the analog sticks. If you're mostly playing 2D games, like up to 16-bit era, you might like these ones that are kind of more like just a traditional Game Boy. But again, this one's kind of in the middle as far as the size goes. And I picked it for a few reasons. People are obviously going to argue about which one is better. People that have the Anbernic are going to say you should have bought the Anbernic. And if I bought the Anbernic, people that have the Miyoo Mini Plus are going to say you should have bought the Miyoo Mini Plus. That's just the way it's going to be. From what I've seen, the quality control is a little bit better on this than it is on the Anbernic. The same seller on Amazon On their store, they sold both. And if you went to the RG35XX and you looked through the reviews, it seemed like 1 in every 3 or 1 in every 4 reviews was someone saying it didn't work out of the box. It didn't boot up out of the box. I had to send it back and get another one. If you get a good one, it's probably good. It just seemed like 1 in every 4 people were getting a bad one. I think the D-pad's also a little bit better on this one, but I could be wrong. Of course, though, the RG35XX is bigger. It's going to be more comfortable. If it's something that you're playing on for longer periods of time, you're probably going to want to consider the RG35XX. So here it is. Again, I've turned this on and I played it for like 2 seconds. Just so I knew it was working before the video. But I really don't know a lot about this. I'm not like an expert. Again, I've never used these before. I know a lot of people that are really into these things will like to, change the firmware, put different software, put different emulators on it. But I'm hoping that out of the box, it's a good enough experience for most people to just play some games. This has got an ARM Cortex-A7 dual-core 1.2 gigahertz processor. Pretty sure it can do up to PlayStation fine. Again, for me, it's mostly going to be for 2D games, maybe up to PlayStation, but a lot of 16-bit stuff. Screen's a 3.5-inch IPS. It's 640 by 480, so it's 4 by 3, or roughly 4 by 3 anyways. It should look pretty good for retro games, and it's a pretty high resolution. For mostly games are going to be like 240p. So hopefully like a 2x scale on most of those games on that screen is going to look pretty good. It's a 3000 milliamp hour battery. Actually, I haven't even opened this up yet to see what the battery looks like. They say that's good for 4 to 5 hours of gameplay, so that's cool. It does have vibration motors built in, apparently, for games that are using that. Again, if you're playing some of the later generation games. And it's running on some sort of Linux. I believe it has RetroArch as well, but they've got their own sort of front end in there, their own sort of menu system. Again, hopefully it's easy enough for a newbie, and I'm considering myself a newbie here, having never really used these before. But for just the average Joe to be able to pick up, find the games, play the games, maybe do save states and exit the game. So yeah, we got volume buttons on the side. On the bottom, we have a headphone jack, it looks like. We've got a micro SD card slot with a card in there. That's what it came with. I haven't even pulled this out yet. I would guess it's 32 or 64 gigabytes. Lexar 64 gigabyte card. And obviously that has all the pre-installed games on there. But again, that might be different depending on the seller. We've got our Type-C port on the bottom there for charging, power button on top, got some lights up top. We got 4 shoulder buttons on the back. So a lot of these are set up in this manner that you can easily get to sort of L1 and R1, but L2 and R2 are in a little bit further. This comes in different colors. You can get a clear black one with like Super Famicom colors. You can get a clear purple one. This one's the kind of, I guess, retro kind of throwback, and so it's the one I went with. It's not really the same color as a DMG. It's a much more of a brownish warm color, but it does have those sort of like burgundy colored B&A buttons, and obviously its overall form factor kind of looks like a DMG. Got a button in the middle. I'm assuming that's some sort of a menu button, but I guess we'll find out. Again, I've really not used this much yet. So we'll hit the power button and nothing happens. Probably have to hold it down for X amount of time before this thing will turn on, and there we go. Miyoo Linux Gamers, did that say? Again, this is running some form of Linux. I'm not super familiar with how that's set up. It's got a very, I guess, unique little menu system here. We've got recent, favorites, game, RetroArch, of course, is there. We've got apps. I'm not sure what kind of apps you would have or why. I'm not too concerned with that. And we got settings, and that's it. But if we go into game, you can see we've got, Famicom, Game Boy Advance, Mega Drive, Super Famicom, PlayStation, Master System, I don't Wonder Swan, Wonder Swan color. I was gonna say I don't know what that is. We got PC Engine, Neo Geo Pocket, Atari 2600, 7800. We've got arcade, so MAME I would assume, and Neo Geo, Pico Drive. That would be Genesis, Master System, Game Gear, and SMS Plus. That would probably also be Sega Master System Game Gear. So all right, I'm back here with my camera instead of my phone. My phone really wasn't doing the screen justice. The colors looked way off. I was playing Sonic the Hedgehog, and I think it was like World Zone 3, where a lot of the background was purple, and on the phone recording, it would look blue. So the colors were way off, and it didn't look good at all. It's a very good looking screen in person, so I wanted to try and do this screen as much justice as possible. So I've got my Nikon camera out. Hopefully that looks better. I wanted to talk about the games list first because there's way too many ROMs on here. A lot of them are repeating, and there's a lot of hacks, and there's some just cheesy games. You'll notice here in the list that a lot of these, well, these all have a number in front of them. And if you go into a Genesis, if you go into Super Nintendo or the Famicom list, they're all the same way. The first 1/3 or maybe 1/4 to 1/3 of the list is going to start with these numbers. And some of these you'll go to play and you'll realize it's a bad ROM, or it's some sort of a hack, or there's some sort of like cheat applied. A lot of them are just badly. Elevator Manager, I don't know, is that the name of a game? Or is that supposed to say Elevator Action? I don't know if that was on Mega Drive. And if you scroll down past all these ones with the numbers, you're eventually going to get just an alphabetical. And this seems to be a better list. These seem to be better ROMs. And so it's almost like they took two lists. They took one from a bad, 1001 compilation, and then they took a decent set of ROMs, and then they just combined them into a folder. So, again, it's the same with the Famicom. The first couple thousand in this list have numbers in front of them, and then you get into alphabetical, and it seems to be that the better ROMs are here. And so I think right away, if you just went into the folders and deleted all the ones with the numbers in front of it, you've improved this thing slightly. All right, so let's look at some games running. I'm going to start with Sonic the Hedgehog for the Genesis. Now, turn the volume down a little bit. I just want to say the scaling is excellent. The game plays fine, the game sounds fine, but the game looks amazing. It seems to run perfectly smooth, 99.9% of the time. Every once in a while, I do notice a little extra slowdown or something every so often, but pretty rare. So most of the time, I would say it's running very good. It looks very sharp. It looks like it's an integer scale. I'm not sure. Maybe it's not, but it looks like it. I don't see any sort of like shimmering artifacts or anything that you would normally associate with the non-integer scale. And yeah, it looks great. So pressing the menu button brings up this very simple to use menu. We can load save and load save states very quickly, very easily, and we can just exit game, and there you go. So now I'm going to load up PC Engine, okay? So we'll load up something like Jackie Chan. I believe that's the PC Engine version. Yep. Now on the PC Engine, as you can see, we get slight little borders at the side, but it seems to be a good integer scale. Again, the image is very sharp. Oops. Yeah, the image is very sharp. The scrolling is very smooth. It looks great. Sounds good, runs good, looks great. And again, this screen looks pretty awesome. I would say even still in person it looks a little better than it looks on the camera, although this looks a little bit better than it did on the phone. And the phone, the sky would be like fucking purple or something. Here, at least the colors look fine. They're a little bit muted though. The sky in person looks a little darker blue than what I see on the camera. And we're gonna go to exit game, because now we're gonna try Super Nintendo. So let's try Super Mario World. Like Sega Genesis, the Super Nintendo here pretty much filling up the entire screen, and it looks sharp. The scaling is sharp. The scrolling is smooth. It looks, runs, and sounds fantastic. So regular Super Nintendo games are certainly a win. Let's go to exit. I'm going to throw Metal Slug up there. That's Neo Geo. It seems to be the... Is it the MVS version, not the AES version? You got to insert coins, so it's... I don't know if this is MAME, but it's under the Neo Geo section in the game list. As you can see, it's full screen, and it's sharp, it's smooth, it looks great. So that's pretty awesome. Alright, so Neo Geo runs fine. I'm gonna exit game. So far I've shown everything that is good, and that's been on purpose. Now we're going to go to something that's less than perfect, but it's still okay. Super Mario Land for the Game Boy. The scaling on the Game Boy is a little soft. And actually I've got a picture of this next to my real Game Boy Pocket with an IPS mod. And that picture is not fooling you in any way. Both screens are in focus there. The real Game Boy Pocket with the IPS screen is much sharper. Again, the way that this is doing the scaling, at least by default, it's very, very soft. I also don't necessarily like this plain black and white background. If we go into the settings, so for each emulator we've got settings. If we go to native menu, but there's not a lot of settings here. When we go to options, we can change the scaling between 3 settings. We can have no border, and we can have full screen. But we can't change the colors, as far as I can tell. So really not a lot of options here. And this is starting to get into reasons why you might want to put Onion OS on here. And with Game Boy, I can already see why. So when you have Onion OS on here, this is how Game Boy looks by default. And again, this isn't my video. I believe this is the same guy that I used the photo from earlier, so I'm going to have a link to this video in the description. This video is kind of explaining how to put Onion OS on one of these and why you would want to put Onion OS on one of these. And with Game Boy, we can already kind of see. I like the way it looks. I like the greenish look over this plain black and white look. And that's very minor. This looks okay, other than, well, right now being stretched. Not so much. But if we go back to the default, out of the box, this is how Game Boy games look. They look okay. Again, they're a little soft. And again, I'm not huge on the grayscale, especially when there's a green border around it. I don't know what they were thinking there. But it's okay. This is perfectly usable. But it gets worse, folks. It gets much worse. We are going to go to NES games. This is how NES games look by default. And who in the right mind thought this was a good idea? I don't know. They've got this weird CRT filter on here. and it has this very diffused reflection look on there. And they've got scan lines on here. On a small screen like this, that has you can barely see the scan lines if you're holding this thing like 2 feet away from your face, like I am right now. And it really just makes the image look dull. If we go into the native menu for this emulator, we got a lot more options. And we can go to on-screen overlay and we can turn this off. And then if we go back to resume, this is how it should look out of the box. Scaling is sharp. Colors are nice and bright and vibrant. Who in their right mind would look at this and say, no, it should look like this out of the box? Nobody. And again, this is why Onion OS, they put some thought into it. They're going to try and give you the sharpest, best scaling that they can. But for a newbie who's not going to go into this native menu and not going to understand what an on-screen overlay is, they're going to see this and be like, oh God, what's all this? And part of the reason I like this thing is this simple menu. Your save states, your load states, your exit game. So, yeah. It's not a deal breaker. It's just this is why people would want to put Onion OS on this. Last but not least, we're going to look at a PlayStation game. There's not a lot of PlayStation games on here, so that got me thinking, oh, the PlayStation games are going to run terrible. But to my surprise, Tony Hawk here actually seems to run fine. Now, I've never really played this game, to be honest. I played it a little bit on PC back in the day. I had a cracked copy of this on PC back in the day, so I never really played this a lot. But it seems to be running fine. I think this is running full speed. The music's playing, the videos play smoothly. So to my surprise, this thing handles PlayStation better than I thought it would, and it makes me wonder what else it could handle, because they don't have any N64 on here at all. They don't have any Saturn on here at all. So I think with Onion OS, you got a little more choices of what emulators you can put on here. But yeah, it runs PlayStation pretty well, to my surprise. Again, they didn't put a lot of games on there, and a lot of them that are on there are 2D games. Like Castlevania Symphony of the Night is on there. Yeah. So hardware-wise, this thing's great. The screen looks great. The battery life is outstanding. And most of the games on here run pretty good for the most part. A few minor little things that make you think, what were they thinking? With the scaling and the overlay on the NES. And again, I wish it would handle Game Boy a little bit better. But it's easy to use. You could give this to anyone and they'd figure out pretty much immediately and shouldn't have any issues. Again, it's very easy to do your save states, and it's very easy to exit a game, and that's great. And again, the battery life's really good on this thing. And yeah, the screen looks amazing. Again, the color on the screen in person, I think looks better than it's showing up on camera. So keep that in mind. It looks really good on the, on the screen in person. But yeah, that runs just fine. So yeah, it can handle the Super FX games fine. Yeah, I guess that's it. Again, I only wanted to show this from a beginner's point of view. If you buy this thing and you pick it up, It's pretty easy to understand. We've got to hold the power button down to turn it on or off. Do you want to shut down the device? But I mean, the menu button's pretty much always going to bring up what you would expect. And going in and out of games and save states is all pretty easy. I'm really just going to peel that off now. I know you wanted that slow peel, but sorry. That was bothering me there. Yeah, it's a nice looking little system. I do believe it has Wi-Fi. I think that's one of the other differences between this and the Anbernic RG35XX is this one has Wi-Fi. That one has an HDMI output port on the top. So kind of depending on what you would rather have there. With the Wi-Fi, if you have two of these devices near each other, you can actually play multiplayer games together over Wi-Fi. I would assume you could probably also send games to it over Wi-Fi instead of pulling the card out and going to a computer. But on the flip side, you don't have HDMI out on this one. So depending if you would rather have HDMI or if you'd rather have Wi-Fi, that's one of the other differences between the two. And I think some people would rather have one or the other. I don't think there's a definitive like this one's better than the other one. Again, this one's a little smaller. Some people might like that. The Anbernic RG35XX, how many times am I going to say that in this video, is a little bit bigger. And again, some people are going to like that. I really don't care to hear this one's better than that one. I think it really does depend. Yeah, it works. It's fairly simple to use. I think anyone can buy this, pick it up, start playing a game, immediately know how to save state, load state, exit games, go into other games. It's fairly easy to use, simple little menu, simple setup, and again, that menu button pretty much will always bring up what you would expect it to bring up. So in that regards, it's pretty cool. Could some of the emulators be a little bit more accurate and maybe some of them run a little bit better? Yes, again, that's why people do like to change the firmware on these and put their own emulators on these. But I think out of the box, it's okay. Again, the game selection and the naming of the games certainly could be better. But again, that's probably going to depend on the seller and where you buy this from. You're buying this from different people, it's probably going to have a different SD card in there with different games on there. So keep that in mind. I think that's the case anyways. But yeah, cool little device. And again, it's very small. I mean, it's a tiny guy, but it's not like crazy small like the original Miyoo Mini. Again, this is the Miyoo Mini Plus. And the Plus because it's a little bit bigger. But again, not as big as the RG35XX. That's the last time I'm going to say that in this video. But yeah, I think that's it. It's a handy little device. Runs most of these games fine. It's got a decent looking screen on it. It's no surprise these things are popular. And again, these have been around for a little while. It's really... This isn't a video to surprise anyone. I wanted to take a look at it, again, from a newbie perspective. Picking this thing up, hadn't read the instruction book, literally turned it on, and I was able to get around and figure out how to do the basic things. So I think that's worth something. And again, it comes in this little carrying case, which is kind of handy. Comes with the card reader. Again, at least from where I bought it, where you buy it from, may not come in this case. I've seen some people where it just comes in a box, and that may or may not come with this. But the fact this came with the carrying case, to me, that was worth a couple extra dollars for sure. And again, it was Amazon Prime, so that's always quick and easy, and that always wins with me.